So hello and welcome to the Things Conference of 2021. I'm Alan Proithis, the CEO of Capstone Partners, a strategic advisory for accelerating connected business. And of course, we have with us the co-founder and CEO of Things Industries, Wienke Giezeman. Welcome to your own conference. Great to have you here.
Thanks for having me.
I know things are very different this year with the whole world situation with the virus, but it's great that everyone can still exchange ideas and interact. Although I do miss the roar of the conference floor with so many excited people in one place in Amsterdam.
Yeah, and we do too. So next year it's going to be definitely there, and of course also our event in Australia and in Hyderabad, and definitely also in the US, which we had planned for last year. So yeah, we try to get the core proposition of what we always deliver is like a no nonsense, very down to earth a developer conference that's also interesting for product managers and buyers and business people. But yeah, for sure it's different. But yeah, we have a very, very full program packed full of a lot of cool content. So yeah, we're it's going to be awesome.
Oh, wonderful, wonderful. I mean, to me, it's the biggest LP-WAN event of the year. It's the biggest LoRa event of the year, and it's amazing the great stuff you can learn through this event, not just with the sessions that you hold, the formal sessions, but even the informal interactions. And you know, it's been a crazy year with the virus, the economic impact globally. But, you know, it's also provided, in my mind, an opportunity to show how important this whole industry is in connecting things and depending on people less for tasks that, frankly, are just better being automated. And, you know, what have you seen, you know, with your business and Things Network, Things Industries? How have things changed this year? Have you felt the negative impact, the positive impact? How has it affected your business?
Yeah, so for us, it didn't really affect our business very much. We have a very broad spread of a lot of different customers that do a lot of different use cases in a lot of different regions around the world in different industries. So that somehow helped. We saw a few verticals that, of course, got hit: the hospitality industry, restaurants, where we saw quite an increase in food compliance use cases, for instance. But on the other hand, what you also saw that, and because this market is so young, and the part where we're in LP-WAN is still getting started, that you saw that people had time to experiment and to build their lab at home and to come up with ideas. And the interesting thing about the crisis is that, specifically if you look at logistics or anything, then problems become so clear, right? So that's what we saw. And then of course you have a few use cases that specifically target the pandemic, like for instance Tactelic, an IoT provider in the LoRaWAN ecosystem. They provided a contact tracing device, but you also saw companies getting out their CO2 sensors that reflect if a room is ventilated, yes or no. So you saw quite some use cases that in a fast pace could be brought to market. So yeah, I think you saw both. There was a lot of dynamics for sure.
Yeah, that's great to hear. And I think indoor air quality is a great one. I'm actually working on a project in one of the largest U.S. Private 5G networks in the country that we're actually using LoRa to help enable indoor air monitoring, not just from exhaust and trucks, but even just for overall quality, because it's become so much important. And I think nothing illustrates the power of IoT better than even just tracking these very valuable medical resources that are now being distributed around all the countries of the world to fight, what we're dealing with here. So I think it's a great one, and it talks about how the use cases evolved. It's funny we're talking about IoT as an immature business, but now we're in this for a few decades. It's just that I think the technologies now are catching up that it really allow you to actually act upon the opportunity. And I mean, I know there's been, we just talked about sort of the economic impact and the impact on IoT of sort of the virus, but how have you seen use cases evolving just based on the maturity of the industry?
Yeah, so actually, before the COVID crisis, we saw that food compliancy, so temperature measurement in restaurants, in hospitality industry, generating compliance reports, that we saw like a massive surge in that interest. Hospitality as well, where you saw that specifically in the U.S., some states introduced legislation around alarm buttons in hotels for people that work there. So you saw these like pockets and how do you call it, like places of inertia where you say, okay, well, like here it's going fast. And I think what you also saw is that more and more people start to understand that if they compare technologies, they're not so much comparing the characteristics of these technologies, but they're also comparing what I would say design processes.
Mm-hmm.
So when I see analysts or people in the industry talk about technologies, much about the features, but it doesn't really talk about the ease of integration or how does this design process look like? And I think what's shown with these fast product introductions that happen through the at least in the LoRa ecosystem. Speaking on, of course, the industry we're in, we saw that that these go-to-markets were very fast, and that's super interesting because if you look at IoT in general, like doing a product introduction is typically slower than now how fast we now can build a vaccine, right? So
Yeah.
so that's pretty impressive, right? And we somehow had product development that had this short cycle. So yeah, I think that was an interesting insight for last year as well.
Yeah, it's interesting when you compare the virus development process that the world is short-circuited by years, and you hopefully our IoT solution development process is a bit shorter, but that also benefits from being able to collapse that process to be more responsive. And I think you get that more efficient process by using more standardized technologies like LoRa. And of course, there are other technologies, and that's one of the other big developments to me of the past year that we really certainly there are different connectivity technologies for different situations, and I find that often the best solution is a combination of different things. But when you look at what's happening more in the LPWAN space, whether it's licensed or unlicensed, there was so much hype behind NB-IoT. I think NB-IoT is sort of steadily marching along. But LoRa, to me, has really broken out in the past year to be the clear LPWAN winner for many, many things. And how would you explain that? Because, you had all the big telcos, of course, behind NB-IoT, and NB-IoT is not going away. It's going to have its successes. But LPWAN with LoRa seems to have gone a bit faster. And what's your view of that?
Yeah. So I agree, and I think how we say it is that we see that LoRa is cracking a lot of different nuts, and it ranges from that we have customers that track thousands of cows in Australia. We have companies in the co-working space business like Spacewell and WeWork that use it in their their dynamic workspaces. We do it on ships using LoRa 2.4 gigahertz. For global deployments, and so yeah, for sure, it's finding its way in a lot of different industries, and I think the first one is that it is let's say an open technology that allows to be implemented in a lot of ways because there's no business model that comes with it or a tight ecosystem. Like you can buy the chip, and then you can do whatever you want with it. So there's this inherent freedom in the technology. Next on that, independent of that, you have this LoRaWAN ecosystem governed by the LoRa Alliance, which makes sure that there's a standardization on top of that. Also giving it making it a bit more agnostic from the silicon providers that provide, and this creates a really, really good breeding ground for a lot of different devices. And now after 5 years, you have so many devices that if you come in, you see, okay, I need temperature sensors. Then I can choose, maybe there's 50 available, and there's one or two that are really, really good. If I go to parking, I can have 10 vendors, and there's one really, really good. So I think what changed over the specifically last 12 to 24 months is that you do not only have a lot of choice, but you also have a very clear winner per niche, and that just like shows maturity, shows that you can scale, that helps a lot. And yeah, basically, it's just really about, and that has always been our mission, is to make sure that developing an application is just as easy as possible. And when you develop it, you also directly do not only build a POC, but also make sure you can scale it later. So that already embedded in the basic fundamentals are tools that allow you to scale security. So all of these things, like these, there's a lot of small things that make sure that this success is there. But these are just a few just that I have on top of my mind. Yeah.
Sure. And of course, we have to wrap up with the last question. Since it's still January, I'm allowed to ask you about your 2021 predictions for the industry. So what's your biggest prediction for 2021 for IoT?
Yeah. So IoT and prediction, that's always a very bad idea, but that's why we should do it. So
what any time frames on them. That's the trick.
That would not be. So no, what I think is that I think definitely the crisis hit the industry, but my prediction for 2021 is that when we go back and boot up all these processes, I mean, we're gonna be back in planes probably way less, but all these operational processes are gonna be the same. And this whole crisis just exposed a lot of weak spots in our logistics, in our restaurant business, in our hospitality business. And when we boot up again, there will be this clear understanding of where the problems are. And now we have a mature technology. So like connecting the problem with the solution, I mean, this is going to be, this is going to be a big explosion of innovation. It just has to be.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. Well, thank you so much for these great comments. I think it's a great perspective as a person who sees so many of the activities going on in the industry. So I think your perspective here is very valuable. Thank you, and best of luck with the first ever Virtual Things conference this year.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me again, and thanks for doing these interviews. Thank you very much.
My pleasure. Bye bye.